Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in for this webinar. My name is Vipul and I lead co-marketing for VWO. I'll be your moderator for today. For those who are hearing about VWO for the first time, VWO is the world's most trusted and easiest to use A/B testing and conversion rate optimization platform. Today, we have Ankur Sharma from our VWO marketing team itself who will be presenting this webinar. Thanks for doing this presentation, Ankur. Okay, so Ankur recently wrote an ebook in collaboration with HubSpot. It's called The Advanced Guide to Scaling a Conversion Optimization Program. In this webinar, Ankur will take you through the process of scaling your conversion optimization program. Now, before I let Ankur introduce himself and start with his part of the presentation, I request everyone to ask any questions that you might have during the course of this presentation using the GoToWebinars questions panel. With that, Ankur, let's begin.
Hello everyone and welcome to the webinar. My name is Ankur and I work in the marketing team at VW as a product marketer. So before we jump right into the webinar, I wanted to reflect on why are we doing this webinar. So in 2018, we partnered with HubSpot to launch a guide for our readers called the Complete DIY Guide to Improving Conversions. It was aimed at budding optimizers and business owners of small size or aspiring marketers who want to learn how they can go about executing an end-to-end conversion optimization program. And we did so in a format which talked of how they can do it in a 60-day end-to-end time-bound process. Realizing the opportunity and responsibility that we felt after the success of this ebook, we realized that now we owe our readers the successor to this ebook, which talks about how any business owner or any optimization manager can go about scaling their already set up conversion optimization program. So in case you haven't read this ebook yet, I'd request you all to download this ebook from the link given below. You can take a snapshot of the slide and circle back to after the webinar, and you'll also receive the webinar slides from where you can download this ebook. So let's jump into what we are going to cover today. So while the course of developing this ebook, we realized that there are 6 major elements that form the basis for any successful conversion optimization program, especially one which has been scaled from X to 10X or to any scale. So it goes from creating a culture of experimentation to continually generating high impact data driven hypothesis to building a long-term experimentation roadmap and going forward to how you can bind that all up and keep the momentum of the success going, and then how you grow your conversion optimization team to ensure that you have all the elements in the place to ensure that you can take your conversion optimization program from X to 10X. So before we jump into each of these elements, I just wanted to take a moment and reflect this quote from the man himself, Jeff Bezos. We all know the behemoth, the e-commerce behemoth that Amazon is, and one of the reasons for their success has been their ingrained ideology into following experimentation as a core business practice, and it has paved the way for it to become the e-commerce giant that it has become. So with that, let's jump right into the first element or the first section of this webinar. So to scale any conversion optimization program or to scale any sort of business practice, it is essential that the business has a culture of the ingrainedness in the veins of the business. And so similarly, to scale your conversion optimization program from X to 10X, you need to ensure that your business is one in whose veins flows the culture of experimentation. So why is it that you need to adopt a culture of experimentation. So it's interesting to ponder that how some companies which can consistently move faster than their peers and able to consistently deliver great customer experience across the entire journey, uh, is able to do so because they have a culture of experimentation ingrained in their veins. And when a company follows a culture of experimentation, all the different teams and all the different functions are empowered to collaborate and work towards, you know, and the objectives of the company. Have formed, around their opinions, and more importantly, breaks the hippo culture, which we all know about. And due to all this, a culture of experimentation is able to deliver the delightful experiences all across the customer journey. And this is really essential for any business to move forward or think about scaling their conversion optimization program. Now, having talked about why it is important, we need to jump on how one can go about building this culture of experimentation. So, uh, culture flows like a waterfall in the company. And to inculcate a healthy culture of optimization, it's imperative that the top management complies. If the top management is on the same page as the team, they'll realize the need for this function, and they'll allocate the sufficient budget that is required for it. Uh, Having that in place, what else you require is that your entire team believes in the power of data, and they base all their decision in data, and intuition never comes into play. So before you begin optimizing your business processes or anything, it is imperative that you take stock of the current standing, and you need to assess how you are placed currently and then move forward. So a good optimization program would always be rooted in in-depth data and research of what you are optimizing for which end goals, and how you can go about doing the same. Uh, Now, having talked about that, although the stakeholders and the top management can provide for the resources that you will require for your optimization program, your team would have to have a mindset for experimentation, and they would also need to believe and know enough to contribute in a significant and a valuable way to your program. So these once you have some of these elements in your culture, you will be able to definitely build a build and inculcate a habit which promotes being data driven, and which promotes being driven by experimentation and the power of optimization. Although these might seem these might not be true for all businesses, but this is a good starting point for any business to move forward. Uh, Once we have the So another thing to note here is that Forrester research pointed out that insight-driven businesses are growing more than 30% annually. So it just goes on to prove the point that you need to believe in having a mindset which believes in being data-driven. Uh, Once we have the culture in line for the success of our optimization program to scale, what's more important is that you generate high impact data driven hypothesis on a repeatable basis. So for your testing to make any sense, or for the results to have any value, uh, you need to learn how you can continually generate high impact data driven hypothesis. So coming up with an idea that you can test isn't tough. What's tough is to come up with an idea that you should test. So more often than not, when they try to do conversion optimization by keeping only a single aspect in mind and not having sight on the long term goals. However, if you want your conversion optimization program to scale to a massive success, you have to ensure that you follow a methodical process by which you can come up, churn out, really great hypotheses day in and day out. So there was a report by e-consultancy on CRO, which rightly pointed that a structured approach to improving conversion is twice as likely to see, increase in a bottom line than one which is done in a tactical or a sporadical way. So this is once you have realized the importance of having the sound hypothesis, uh, here's how you can here's the two approaches that you can take in the general scheme of things, or how you can build these hypotheses. So the inductive approach says that you brainstorm a set of ideas and then you look at the data to validate those hypotheses. So this would be more like uh, first placing your opinion and then using the data to validate it, observations in the data and the insights that you have available, and then you go about forming your hypothesis based on this deductive approach. So you can follow either of these approaches as long as you are actually looking at data to validate whatever it is that you are brewing with your hypothesis. So when once you have all the data that you need with you, what you need to do is you need to formulate hypotheses using the three types of data that you would have available. So it could either be quantitative data such as website analytics, or it could be heuristics or website behavior analytics, or it could be qualitative data that comes directly from the horse's mouth, that is your customer. So you know if you are, let's say, if we talk about observing data, so website analytics tools like Google Analytics and Kissmetrics tell us how visitors are navigating your website on a site architecture level, and from there you get an understanding of where exactly is the pain point in your website or in your any of your digital properties. So observing data will tell you where is it happening, and if you find one such anomaly, you could go about using this format of asking why enough number of times so that you come to a kind of a conclusion which tells you what's not working for you, right? So once you've observed data, you can look at observing behavior of your customers or users, and there are two methods that you can use. So one is heuristic analysis. Heuristic analysis is when usability experts review a website to identify any common or usability design issues that might be there. So there are a set of basic principles and practices that they look into, and from there they deduce if there are any issues that could be fixed right off the bat. So what you see on the screen is a heuristic analysis framework by Jacob Nielsen, who is a renowned web design expert. And if you once after the webinar, you can reflect back on it and see if there are any issues that you might find on your own website, and then it would help you in creating hypothesis for your own business as well. Uh, and having talked about it, visitor behavior analytics tools like heat maps and click maps or mouse recording tell you which part of the page that what's happening on your website. And this is another crucial aspect when you are trying to build hypothesis for your business. And lastly but not the least is when you observe opinions directly from your customers, and this could be one of the ways to do this is good by using something called on-site surveys. So before you ask the questions, it's imperative to know that why are you asking the question, by clearly outlining the end goal that you're trying to get out of the survey. Next, uh, when to ask the question. So asking the right question at the right time is even more important. So you could look at average time on site and a page view metrics and ask questions to visitors who have engaged enough with the website, just simply for qualification reasons. Uh, then you come to which questions to ask and in which format. So here you could actually do some research and figure out what could work best for your business. For example, if you're an e-commerce business, NPS is one thing that you might be tracking, obviously, and similarly you can have use any other different framework for your business to identify these problems. So, once you follow any of these frameworks or any of these guidelines to come up with hypothesis, and if your team also learns the same kind of things that you require to come up with these hypotheses, you would be able to continually generate great insights and great hypotheses to create a backlog of these great ideas which could help you or your website into becoming better through optimization. So coming to the next aspect of the topic is how once you have enough ideas through this your hypothesis generation, and your whole team is aligned with your goals, so you would have a plethora of hypotheses to test. And often organizations do not have a structured approach to conversion optimization, and they arbitrarily pick out hypotheses from the pool of options that they have. However, if you remember that we talked about being methodical with your conversion optimization program, that is not a good thing to do, and that is when you would realize the need for having a prioritization framework for your hypothesis pipeline. So what's exactly the importance of a prioritization framework? So it's the prioritization framework is analogous to a calendar, in that it provides a clear direction to your optimization program, and it also prevents you from doing aimless testing. So the framework basically enables you to maintain a dedicated schedule for all your CRR activities, and once you have that, it's and bringing all the stakeholders on the same page, everyone remains in the loop. So it's good that you have a prioritization framework which you align with your conversion optimization efforts. So that's a really good practice and an essential one. Now coming to how do you set up a prioritization framework? So there are tons of prioritization framework that exist out there, and here are some of the famous ones, like for example the wider funnel PIE framework, or the Brian Eisenberg's PIR model, or the Monetate, or the Hot 5 points model. We at PWO follow a model which is called the CIE. So we scale our hypothesis on a scale from 1 to 5 on factors such as confidence, importance, and reach. And in the general sense of the word, what it would tell you is what it is. And so once you have once you decided to apply any of these frameworks to your calendar, you could either do that, or you could come up with any of your frameworks. So one way to go about it is to know how you would determine the potential impact, or let's say the ease of your executing the test or hypothesis. So depending on the research that you have put in to build your hypothesis, you can easily estimate that the impact that it is going to have. And the more insights driven that your hypothesis is, the more confidence you can have on its success. For example, let's say your heat map analysis could indicate that a large chunk of your visitors are not able to locate a button, let's say the CTA button, and the visual is making you confident that if you make any changes, it will definitely yield in a positive result. So this will have a high potential impact for your business, and which is why it's important that you ensure that enough insights are being put into your hypothesis. So another apart from just knowing whether it's high potential or not, there are two ways that you can also look at it. So let's say if the hypothesis is in alignment with your business objective, if you look at the graphic on the right side, for each hypothesis that you want to test, there would be, let's say, a target metric, a metric that is imperative, and that would bring with it a key metric and a KPI, and it will all drill down to the last number that you can find which will tell you whether the impact of this hypothesis would be significant or no. Apart from that, location of the test is also of high importance. For example, the most critical pages, for instance, let's say if you have a SaaS website, so the pricing page would be of more importance to you than, let's say, the about page. And in terms of most visited pages, pages with high traffic volume are more likely to yield quicker results. So they would have, uh, that the effort would be lesser compared to other pages. Let's and they then for example, if you are running A/B tests on your advert pages or ad pages, uh, you would want to prioritize them over other tests uh, because you are spending more money to acquire users there. So one factor is the potential impact, and the other one is the potential ease. So by culminating these two factors, you can actually assess the whether this and create a simple framework for you to prioritize your hypothesis. So if you look at potential ease, so there are three major chunks of it. So one is the availability of resources. So if you have more resources available, it will be easier for you to get this test out in the open. Cost of the test is also which will determine the potential ease, and the duration of the test is also of key importance here, because you don't want your test to be running for too long, or let's say for too less time. So uh, once you have at least this much information about a hypothesis, you can easily prioritize them, and make sure that you have a roadmap long enough where you are successfully able to achieve your business goals. Uh, Now, coming to another aspect of how when you scale your conversion optimization program. So it's really important, that before you get down to it, you have the program goals and how you will measure it, the measurement framework in place, because at the end of the day, it's all about the hard numbers, and you will have to prove justify the ROI and everything that comes with it. So successful conversion optimization teams set goals, and then they measure them over time, and you have to track both the volume and velocity of experiments that you are running. So you know you can also, let's say, measure the time that it takes an experiment to go from idea to deployment. You can also track how many experiments that you have at each stage of the process. So apart from these, there are we have a step by step breakdown of the goals that you can of how you could go about setting goals for your conversion optimization program. So uh, you know so the first step and the most important step is, so conversion optimization should be based around business goals, because it's like building a house, and you can't paint the walls until you have the walls, and you can't put up the walls until you have laid the cornerstone. And if you try to get out of order, you will end up with a house that can stand up the stormy days. So start by looking at your overarching business goals. What do you want to achieve in the next 5 years, 10 years, and let's say start just from what do you want to achieve in this year, and then the next 2 years, 5 years, and down to the next 10 years. So you know once you have that in place, you need to cascade your business goals into tangible conversion goals, right? So once you have established a solid foundation, by will now is when you can actually build the walls. So you know it's important to ask yourself whether your website and mobile app, how is it going to contribute to your business goals, and then you will set a set of specific goals which are measurable with impact to the overarching business goals that you defined earlier. So once you have the overarching business goals and tangible measurable conversion goals in place, uh, for each website goal you would have a set of metrics that you can measure. So these metrics are really important, because then you will be measuring this will become your measuring stick by which you would choose to optimize and determine the success of your individual conversion optimization campaigns. And this would then pave the way for the step four, which is that you optimize and improve these metrics over the time. And all the hard by laying the foundation is now when you can actually build on it. So each of your conversion optimization tests should directly be relatable up the chain and back to your business goals, so that you can track them, track and measure your success. And don't they always have a purpose. Select and create optimization tests. As long as you got the foundation in place, you're is only useful if it is in the service of a business goal. So make sure that you are never getting ahead of yourself. Which brings us to another important point, right? So you should consider this, that not all visitors to your site are at the same buying decision stage. Some are just looking to learn things, some are actively prospecting, and some others are just ready to buy. So just the fact that visitors will be at different stages is why you need to track and optimize for conversions at all these different stages of the user journey. And of macro and micro conversions comes in. So macro conversions, are the actual sales or conversions, like checkout for an e-commerce business or making a call to a sales team. And micro conversions are low involvement commitments from the user, where they, for example, download an ebook or sign up for a newsletter subscription. So it may seem that micro conversions are all that matter for a business, but micro conversions are the baby steps that the visitors take, to get to know your brand, eventually leading them to become your customer. So good conversion optimization requires tracking both, and it's essential that you do that, because at the end of the day, it's a long journey, and you would always have to make sure that you're taking the right steps in the right direction. Having talked about the overarching goals and how we would go about setting goals for a program, so it's through the course of an entire program, it's really essential that whatever surprising findings that you find, you are able to churn out useful insights from them. So you always want to make sure that whether your results are good, bad, or inconclusive, you have to know that they are results and there is always something to learn from them. So let's just ponder over how you investigate and analyze the outcomes of your conversion optimization campaigns over time. So before you take any action, you will need to evaluate the results of your experiment to determine whether the test was winning, losing, or inclusive. And during this investigation phase is when you start comparing your results to the business goals that we had set in the previous chapter, and then you go about back to your hypothesis and bring the test to full circle. So when you are referring to all of these campaign results and getting the idea of the average visitor or user's behavior, you would want to segment your results to focus on specific segments. You would want to deep dive into audience segments and learn about how you can get actionable insights or even uncover any surprising conclusions. So for example, adding a new feature into your website experience may have a much greater impact for your mobile audience rather versus the desktop visitors. And this is something which you would be able to learn if you really deep dive and segment your test results. So asking some of the following questions can help you analyze your results across experiments very effectively. So questions like do any specific segments behave differently from the overall audience, or let's say if they did, what were the attributes and goals of this particular segment, and why do you think they responded to the test that they did, and which variation did your most valuable visitor choose. So you can use the answers to these questions to make better decisions with your test results. And that brings us to the point of what do you actually do with your test results. And there is no such thing as a failed test, in my opinion. And what you should ideally do is you should consider these two parameters. And this is when you found winning variation, you should ask the questions such as what is the cost of deploying, engineering hour, design hours, and whether make sure that you go live with this winning variation. However, when you find a losing variation is when you have to do even more you have to think about it even more deeply. And you should go back and look at your research and find out if you have a valid hypothesis or whether your hypothesis was faulty indeed. You should analyze the test data as we talked about, and then do segmentation to reveal insights of other segments. You should definitely validate research data with qualitative surveys and visual analytics from your test behavior, and a number of these things which you really need to do when a losing variation is the one that you've come up with. Uh, right. So it's important to know what to do with your test results. What's more important is to share and evangelize learnings with your team. So after you have the data with you, promoting company-wide transparency is really critical to the success of your overall experimentation program. And it just widens the impact of your testing, and promotes the culture that you have worked so hard to develop. And it evangelizes the importance of continuous iteration. So you can just simply start by sharing results with your testing team, relevant stakeholders, and anyone involved in the ideation process. To make sure you include the purpose of each test, really define the details, and do something very simple such as which variation one poll that highlights key learnings and get more employees invested into your experimentation program. Uh, which brings us to the final aspect and element in our team in our journey. So, which is uh, how do you go about growing a winning optimization team? So, at any given time, since conversion optimization is cross-functional, you could either have all of these people working in your team, or you could have one person doing more than one role. But at the end of the day, you would require a conversion optimization manager, a data analyst, a web graphic designer, a copywriter, and a web developer. So depending on the budget and the size of your organization, you can choose to either, have more than one people do more than one roles, or you can have more than one people do a single role and contribute to it. The best organizations that run very mature experimentation programs is that they tend to invest heavily in employee development. So that means granting generous education stipends for conference. There are great conversion operation specific courses out there, and some programs you should make everyone in your team run through are the intermediate Google Analytics course by the Google Analytics Academy, the A/B testing mastery course by CXL, the conversion optimization strategy course by HubSpot Academy, the CRO certification course by Conversion Excel again. And you know uh, once you have uh, all of this in place for your team, they'll really grow, and your entire conversion optimization program would become an more efficient one. So, coming to the end of this ebook, as it would be beneficial for us to turn back and reflect on, the most important aspect when it comes to scaling any business function is that you need to have that culture and mindset. So you just make sure that you're able to, follow the basic tenets that we've talked about in this webinar and in the book, which you can download from the link on your screen. Before you leave, be sure that you pay this webinar forward, and you also pay the ebook forward to anyone in your network who would benefit from this. So that was my time, and I wish all of you good luck and happy optimizing. I would now request people to take it from here.
Hey, Ankur, that was really a great presentation indeed. I'll actually take a moment and go back to one of your slides wherein you mentioned about what to do with your test results, right? So when you get a winning variation, what you need to do, and when you get a failed variation, what you need to do in that situation as well, because we feel that a lot of businesses ignore this part of analyzing their test results and just move forward, and going ahead they just lose interest in the entire concept of experimentation itself. So I think analyzing your test results is the key part to for scaling your optimization program. So that's a great slide, and the entire presentation was great, Ankur.
Thank you so much, Vipul.
Cool. Yeah, I'm sure the audience must have loved it too. And yes, we have gotten a couple of questions, but since we are running a bit short on time, so let me see, we'll take just maybe 2 to 3 questions, right? So the first question comes from Renko. Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, Renko. So Renko is basically pointing to one of your earlier slides in which you had mentioned about inductive method, right, of hypothesis building. So he's asking, isn't the inductive method a bit tricky because of the associated confirmation bias?
Vipul, I think that's absolutely a valid point, and confirmation bias is something that we humans are continuously living with. So even though we might have that bias, what we can do is rather than just looking at data from analytics or sources such as heat maps, we should go a step further and talk to directly to our customers. And if we do that through the way of, let's say, surveys or website reviews, that would be a great way to break that confirmation bias and make sure that what we're doing is actually based in qualitative, quantitative, and insightful data, and not just limited to our opinions and biases.
Right. And also the primary aim of running any online experiment is to rule out all those biases, right? So the more you test, the less are the chances of these confirmation biases creeping into your,
Absolutely.
So the,
absolutely.
keep on,
Absolutely.
always be testing, as they say. So the second question is, the second question is from Bhargavi. So Bhargavi is, I think, talking about server-side testing. Correct me if I'm wrong. So Bhargav is asking, I understand that there's A/B testing using front-end modifications, but how much of the server-side testing is encouraged?
Vipul, I might not be the best person to answer this question, but I'll try from whatever knowledge I have of the topic. So, it all comes down to how much, you are willing to, take it in terms of, let's say, the impact that it will have on your business. So, how much, server-side testing would obviously require more bandwidth from your development team. So, there is a, you need to make sure that the effort that you are putting in would result in a significant outcome. So usually it's there is no right way to do it. It's just all about making sure that at the end you are getting the bang for your buck.
Right. And I would also that's a great point about knowing what you are actually what is your North Star metric, right? What are
Absolutely.
you really aiming to change with this online with running this particular test with server side testing? It is more about the use case, right? So if let's take an example of an e-commerce website. Since the pricing, sorry, the payments page is quite the most what do you call a delicate page for an e-commerce website, because any sort of friction can actually take away it's a lost opportunity essentially, right? So that particular area wherein the server side testing will come into play and prove its worth, as compared to a client side testing wherein you're just persuading the user to basically go to that payments page. So it all depends. So Bhargavi had also asked about if there's any industry standard as to how many server side tests you should be running. I'm afraid I'm not actually aware of any standards, but as far as my understanding goes, it's all mixed, right? So you have to be the best judge depending on how valuable is that page for you, for your business, and for your consumer. So yeah, you have to take a call there.
That makes sense.
Right. So hope that answers your question, Bhargavi. Great. So I think it's time to close this webinar now. Thanks for all the answers, Ankur.
You're welcome, Vipul.
Great. So I request everyone again to download this ebook by going to the URL. We'll share the URL in the follow-up email as well, and it's there on your screen as well. You can take a screenshot of it right now. There are a lot of insights that will help your business grow, and that will also make your customers happy. So yeah, once I'll close this webinar, you'll be presented with a survey. Please fill in that survey, and your feedback will help us a lot in our upcoming webinars. Have a good day, everyone.